Good morning. We're learning as chosr for Shlema Filan Chai Basarach. We are starting the new parak of Shtei Midas Shel Yavesh. Very, not very hard so far, but very technical. The first plot is pretty straightforward. It seems like you look when you start it, you think you're going to get into calculations and numbers, but actually, it doesn't really happen that much. Shtei Midas Shel Yavesh Hayu b'Mikdash. There were two uh, measuring cups for dry measures in the Mikdash. Isaron v'chatzi Isaron. The Tanakhama says one was Isaron, one was a half Isaron. May Aimer Isaron, Isaron v'chatzi Isaron. He says there were two Isaron measurements and one half an Isaron. Isaron Mahe Mishamish. What was the use of the Isaron? All the minchas used Israelis of flour, and whether it was one isaron or whether it was 10 menachos or 10 menachos, you did it one by one. Even though when you brought a par, you would bring three Israelim, there was no three isaron measured for a par. And not with two for an aisle. They measured one isaron at a time. Chatzi Yisarn Ma'eh Mishamish. What was the Chatzi Yisarn used for? Shabbai Yemait Chaviti Kohen Gadol. Mechza Baik or Mechza Bein Arbaim. Like we've come across before, the Chaviti Kohen Gadol was a typical mincha that it had an Yisarn, but it was divided into two, and half was in the morning and half was at night. So you needed a Chatzi Yisarn for that purpose. Tanya Rameya Oim. Ma Tamud Loim Yisarn Yisarn Lekeves A'echad. Why does the Torah have to tell you Yisarn for the kef, for single keves? The reason why our mayor said in the Mishnah that you needed two separate Isaron measurements is because the Torah said so. The Torah said Isaron, and that tells you have to have two Isaronim. And what was the purpose of those two Isaronim according to our mayor? He says one, they were different sizes. One measured in Isaron with the top pushed off. That means the way you measured Nisaran, you measured it. It was not heaping. It was, I think, there's like a special tool that people use, chefs use that they use to level off a teaspoon or a tablespoon. So they use the thing to level it off the top. Um, so but the Gadish one would measure Isaron by using a heaping measure. That means it would end up being the same amount, but the two measuring things were different sizes to both end up with the same result. You'd have an Isaron by including the heaping amount, and the other one was a precise measurement of an Isaron. The normal way to measure, they would use a gadish. And the machak was the one that was leveled off. That was used to the Chavite Kohen Gadol. As Rashi will explain a little bit later on, that the Chavite Kohen Gadol, when you were going to measure halves, if you had Gadish, it would end up spilling. So in order for it to be able to get precise halves, and without losing anything, you need to use a machak. They said there was only one Isaron. The Torah says only one Isaron. According to the Chachamim, what does he do with the Meir's pasuk that told him there were two Isaronis? The Rabbis Chatzi Isaron. That's coming to tell you also use a Chatzi Isaron. It seems to me like there was a possibility, according to the Chacham, that maybe you take a half Isaron and a full Isaron, you divide it into halves. You could see when it's each half was equal, that's how you know that it's a Chatzi Isaron. For a Meir, Chatzi Isaron minale. How does a Meir know Chatzi Isaron? He uses Isaron to tell you there were two Isaronim. Nafkale mevi Isaron from the Vav, the Isaron. Rabbanan vav le darshin. The Rabbanan don't darshin the vav. Sagt the Gemara Meir Havi Isar Echad Lekevasa Echad Mayavadle. The Rachamim used Isar and Echad to tell you there was only one Isar. What does the Meir do with that pasuk? He holds it was taka two. Hushlayim did loibishal shloisha lepar v'loibishal shnayim la'ayel. That's to tell you that the different animals that had different amounts of Israelim also just used the same Isaran measure multiple times. Rabbanan nafkaluhu min nekudai. Since there was a nekuda, a dot on top of the word isaran in the pasuk, that's to tell you that there was only one. You only use the same isaran for no matter how many Israelim there were for an animal. The Tanya Rabbi Yossi Lama Naked Vav Sheba Emtzi Isaran Shal Isaran Rishon Shal Yom Tov Rishon Shal Chag. Why was there a nekuda, a dot on top of the vav in the middle of the word Isaran? In the first time it says Isaran in the pasuk when it's talking about the Israelim of Sukkot. The top pasuk says Isaran Echad Lekevas Echad L'Shivas Hakvasim. Why was there a vav? Why was there a nekuda on it? Shaloyim did leibishal vav gimel apar v'leibishal shnayim la'ayil. Tell you that you don't have a separate measurement for the three for the par and the two over the aisle. For Meir nekuda leidarish, Meir does not learn anything from that nekuda. Zok Gemara, Chatzi Yisar Ma'ayu Mishamash V'ayu Yomayit L'Chavite Kohen Gadol. The Chatzi Yisar, what was it used for? For the Chavite Kohen Gadol. Zok Gemara, Moedid V'Ramini Chavite Kohen Gadol Lohayu Boin Chatzoyin Ela. Maybe Yisar and Shalom V'Chaytzeyu. The Gemara says, why do you need a measurement for it? The Torah says, the Brisa says that they would take a full Yisar and divide it in halves. So like I said before, I think the understanding was Chaytzeyu means you take it and you put it into two separate things, two separate kalim, and you look. You could measure it by eye and see that they're equal, and that's how you know they're halves. That's what it means. No, when it means that you measure, it means that that's how you measure. You have to have a separate measuring implement to divide it in half. Remeir had said that there were two Esrainim. One was standard size leveled off, and the other one equaled an Isaran by including the heaping portion, the parts that it was heaped off. What about the Chatzi Isaran? Was that a half or a whole? In fact, the Gemara, for some reason, they stick the siman of the different. There's going to be a bunch of shals of Rabban Bar Chama. We stick it in here. So why don't we ask this question about according to the Rabbanon? According to the Rabbanon also, they said there was one Isaran and one Chatzi Isaran. So we should have the same question of whether it's heaping or leveled off. So tomorrow the Rabbanon Isaran Gufa Kami Bailu. God according to the Rabbanon, it wouldn't have been a question on the half Isaran. We'd have had to ask the question on the original Isaran. And as we're going to see, that's from the Gemara, but from the Rashi, the answers will all come from the Chatzi Isaran. Amalei midiremeya nishmal remeya, midiremeya nishmal rabbanan. We can learn out what Remeir held on the Chatzi Isaran from the full Isaran, and from Remeir's Chatzi Isaran we can learn to the Rabban. Medam Remeir Isaran machuk Chatzi Isaran nani machuk. Since Remeir said that the Chavite Kohen Gadol needed a machuk Isaran, and like we explained before, that was because we wanted it to come out exactly a half. So it doesn't. L'chayra, the Chatzi Isaran that was used also for the Chavite Kohen Gadol would have been of the same type as the Isaran that was used for the Chavite Kohen Gadol. U'mider Meir machak l'Rabbanan nami machak. And since Remeir's reason was why the Chavite Kohen Gadol was done was because it shouldn't spill over. If you use a gadush it's going to spill over by the Chavite Kohen Gadol. According to the Rabbanan, the Isarim was used both for regular Menachos and for Chavite Kohen Gadol. They would l'chayra have the same reason to need a machuk as well by the Isarim. So the same reason will apply to them essentially. That means the Rabbanim, the Chachamim, are going to have the same cheshbon as their mayor. That other menachos don't need bedafka a leveled off isar, but the Chavite Kohen Gadol do need a leveled off. They can't use Gadish. So therefore, everything according to Rabbanan has to be with the machuk and the chatz isaron as well, since they both go together. Another question. Chavite Kohen Gadol v'ma mechalkin l'chalas. The Chavite Kohen Gadol, how did they divide the loaves? They were made into separate loaves. It was made into 12 chalas. Biyad abekli. Was it done by hand? Rashi seems to understand it's talking about the dough. After you made the dough, how did you make it into 12 equal chalas? Because the Chavitin had to be precise. Other menachos, it was not necessary that it be precisely the same. So was it done by hand or with a kli? So the pshita biyad, the iba kli, the only way to do it with a kli was turtani. Turtani yachnes, the iba kli turtani, you'd have to bring in a scale. So the Gemara v'yachnes, what's the problem with bringing in the scale? So the Gemara kivin de b'koliksiv lav oirich ara. Since in the teichacha, part of the teichacha, Rashi brings is that the Torah says, Turtani yachnes kim the kolsiv ve'shivu la'achmechem b'mishkal. It says in the teichacha that they're going to have to weigh their breads with a scale because of it's going to be so scarce. It's going to be so hard to find bread that part of the teichacha is they're going to have to weigh their bread. So since it's part of the klala, scales are part of the klala, we don't bring it into the Beis Hamikdash. What's the din? Can the shulchan, which is mekadosh the lechem that's put on it, could it also be mekadosh the kaimetz levaina that's supposed to go in the bezichin? If you put the kaimetz levaina not in bezichin, but just on top of, let's say, the challah, or in the space of the challah, where the challah would be, over the shulchan. Do we say, I mean, the mekadosh lechem kamatzim not mekadosh? Since it can be mekadosh the lechem, it also is mekadosh these kamatzim. The shulchan is only there to be mekadosh lechem, but kamatzim are supposed to go into the bezichin, so they can't be mekadosh from the shulchan.
Are we going to, is the Gemara going to say where we are actually mekadosh the bezichin?
Well, no, you're supposed to mekadosh them with the bezichin are spoons, so they themselves are clay kodesh. The question is, can you? Right. So the question is, can you mekadosh the levaina incorrectly, not using the bezichin, which is the way you're supposed to mekadosh it, by just placing it directly on the shulchan? Does the shulchan itself have the power to be mekadosh it without using the bezichin, the spoons? Amalei mekadosh said it's not mekadosh. Ini is that so? That he says that there was that according to Madam who says so the lechem was in a chesed. The entire length of the lechem was 10 tefachim, and there's a machlokes about how much of that length would be bent up on each end into the cheses. There were piles. There were what we call sedarim of 6 lechems, one on top of the other. So according to the Manda Amar, that the lechem was 2.5 bent over on the legs of the ches on each side, and 5 on the wide side. So then you would have 6, one on top of the other. 6 times 2.5 is 15. So there we are. That there was 2.5 which is ended up being the height of each piece of bread, each challah. So the shulchan had bread up to, like we said, six of 2.5 each. So it comes out to Mekadesh 15, Lamaila on top. It was how many? It was 10 long, and it was six in the width and two going up. So it's tvachayim kaifel. The parts going up, the legs of the ches were two tvachim. Nimtzu shulchan mekadosh yud beis tefach. 6 times 2 is 12 lamayla. But now, what is it coming to be mekadosh? The only thing it could be mekadosh l'chayra is the levina. So what are we saying that it's mekadosh? The bread obviously is mekadosh. What is it telling you it's mekadosh? Where how much it's mekadosh up? It's mekadosh the bread wherever it is. Amalei ain't mekadosh ikarav mekadosh lipasim. Even though this brisa, when it says that the shulchan has the power to be mekadosh outside of the bread, that is only means that it's mekadosh that the bezicha levina can have a din kedusha. For example, that it will have the heightened sensitivity to tumah, or there'll be mekadosh that will be pasul valina. But it won't be mekadosh it that you could take the levina and burn it, as it doesn't have the kedusha to be brought on the mizbeach. Zok the Mishnah, sheva midas shalach hayeh. There was 7 measurements of liquid measurements in the Mikdash. And as we're going to see at the end of this Gemara, right before part of this Gemara, this was a halacha l'Moshe Misina that we knew that there were 7. So what were the 7? A hin which is 12 lugan, b'chatzi hin which is 6 lugan, ushlishus a hin which is 4 lugan, or revius a hin which is 3 lugan, lug, a single lug, v'chatzi lug, and a half of a lug and a revius a lug. So those are, according to the Tanna Kama, the 7 measurements. There were measurements, there were markings on a single hin. He says there was only one measurement. And as you're going to see, to him, that's what when the halacha l'Moshe Messina was that there was 7 measurements of that we did in the Beis Hamikdash, but not that there was 7 measuring implements, kalim for measurement.
How many lugim were in each hin again?
12. So Adkan, so he says that the marking showed Adkan Lapar, which would be 4, which is 3 lugin, 4 lugin, Adkan La'aya, which is 3, Adkan Lakevesh, which is I think 2 or 1, maybe Par is 3. Par is 3 and 2 and 1. Reb Shimon Sham Hin. Reb Shimon disagrees with the first pshat at Tanna Kama. He basically uses the first pshat, not that it was measured, there wasn't stratiations on the measurement, but rather it was the actual kalim. But he just disagrees that he says there was not the 7th the size of a hin. Because there was never a reason to do a full hin. We never used a full hin in the Beis Hamikdash. There was a 1.5 lug measurement. That's the use for the Chavite Kohen Gadol. The Chavite Kohen Gadol required 3 lugim, but it was divided in half. So you needed 1.5 to divide it in half. This is a brisa that really says the shitas of our Mishnah, but it adds one extra shita. There were 7 midas of liquid measurements. Revius lug, v'chatzi lug, the lug, or revius ahin, u'shlish ahin, v'chatzi hin v'hin. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Yehuda says the same as the Tanna Kama of our Mishnah, except that he starts from the smallest amount instead of starting from the largest amount. Instead of counting from a hin down, he starts from a revius halug, which is our revius, and he goes up. Reb Meir, I'm a hin b'chatzi hin, u'shlish sahin, revius ahin, v'loy b'chatzi lug, or revius. He goes the other direction. Reb Meir is like the Tanna Kama of our Mishnah. Reb Shimon Omer, revius lug. Reb Shimon Aimeloy Hayisham Hin. Reb Shimon has the same disagreement that he had in our Mishnah. There was no need for him. Hin mishamis. So it's mi avi tachtov. So like we asked in the Mishnah, what is Reb Shimon? How does he have the seventh measurement? There was another measurement of 1.5 lugin. Like we said in the Mishnah, that was used to divide up the chavite kohen gadol. They said to him, "What do you need to make a separate measurement of a lug and a half? Why don't you just use the chatzi lug and do it 3 times?" What do you have to have a chatzi lug or a lug? Let's just do everything multiple times with the smallest measurement. A cleat that was used for one midah can't be used for another midah. You can't reuse, do it multiple times to get to the right amount. Now we said before legabi the different animals that you would do it multiple times. We had a pasuk to say specifically that that's how you do it. Right? We learned it out from a pasuk. Zakamara, Ma'ika bein Reb Meir le Reb Yehuda. Why did Reb Yehuda start from the smallest amount and count up, and Reb Meir and our Mishnah counted down? Reb Yochanan birutzei midas ika beinai. The difference between them is the amount that when you make there's a certain amount that when you put a liquid into a kli, surface tension holds a little bit over the height of the kli. Lamanda Amar mimata lamaylo. According to the Manda Amar that says you go from the bottom to the top, kasava birutzei midas nitzkachu. He holds that that part, that extra that's come from Beirutze Midas on the top of a kli, that was also Mekudesh, or Vias Yav Le Rachman ala Moshe. The Rebbeinu Shalom gave Moshe Rabbeinu or Vias. For Amalei Shadika Eilel who Beirutzen. He said, be Meshayeret by including. When you come to make, let's say you take the quarter lug and you want to now make a measurement of a half lug. You take that quarter lug and you pour it into a kli twice, even though that will include birutzin, that's part of the measurement. And Yiltaka, according to this, it sounds like the measurements were very imprecise. That means every larger measurement was, in addition to being twice as big, was also included the birutzin, and then it would have its own birutzin. So each successive one would be a little bit larger than double the size of the one underneath it. The mandama mimayla lamata, but according to the mandama that we went from more to less, he holds out because he says that when you use a larger kli and you divide it in half, when you're pouring it out, the birutzin falls off on the side. Use this because when you pour from a larger kli into a smaller kli, the birutzin falls out. It's a funny way of saying it, but what the Gemara is saying is they're not arguing about the birutzin midas. The birutzin midas was uncontested. It wasn't a subject of discussion. Maybe there's a machlokes somewhere else, but that was not what they were arguing about. Over here, they're arguing about whether there was, the Torah says that it was Malayim, Shnei Malayim Soilos Belula B'Shem Mincha. So that tells you that they have to be full when you measure them. Manda Amar Mil Ma'il Lamata, the one who says that you take the larger kli and use that to measure the smaller ones by dividing in half, Kasava Malayim, or by taking two kalim and make sure they fill it. And the Sava Malayim Shalayachsef Yoser. There he holds it has to be exactly the right amount. So it doesn't when you would pour from a larger kli into a smaller kli, you would have to do it slowly. So that would not cause um any suds at the top. When you pour a beer, it causes it to foam up. But when you do slowly from a big one, you're doing it carefully into a smaller kli, there are no suds. There's no foam to make this shear the smaller measuring cup larger. Malayim Kriya. He holds it's okay if it's a little bit bigger. Malayim just means that it has to be a full measure. It can't be any less, but it could be more. So when you pour from the small measure, you do it twice. Each time it's going to add a little bit of foam. So the larger measure that you get by taking from the smaller to the bigger will end up inevitably, just like the berutzim, it's going to end up being a little bit bigger. But that's okay because Malayim doesn't require that it not be any bigger. Amar Rav Shimon Aimer lo hayisham hin. Rav Shimon asked, "What do you have a hin for? There's no necessity for it." Shapeka Amalahu Rav Shimon l'Rabbanan l'chayr. It's a good taina. For Rabbanan, have a hin to Avad Moshe l'Shem Mishcha. No, there was a hin that Moshe Rabbeinu used when he made the Shemen HaMishcha. The Siv, the Shemen Zayis hin for the Mashicha of the Kalim and the Kohen Gadol. They used the Shemen HaMishcha, and that used the hin of oil. Mar Savakin L'Doris lehavet sarach. Since it wasn't needed in the future, if Shah Hudav Ignas, it was made just for that one time, and then it was hidden away. So it's not relevant to say that there was 7 because it was hidden away. The other one says no, since there was at one time such a thing, in the Halach al-Meshmisina we included. When we said in the Brisa, what are you going to make to replace the hin, according to Rav Shimon, that the hin was not included? What's wrong if you don't include it? So there were two smichas that you did smicha on 2 karbanis tzibur. So we had halachal mishsinai to tell you that hachanami gemir the sheva midas shalach. We also have halachal mishsinai that there were 7 liquid measures hayu b'mikdash. Elazar Tzadik Aimer shnasus hayu b'hin. He says that there were just markings on the hin that told you the different sizes. What about the Halachal Moshe Sinai saying we needed 7 measurements, 7 measures? Leslie, maybe he doesn't have that Halachal Moshe Sinai. Another possibility, my Sheva Midas, Sheva Midas. When it says Sheva Midas, it just means there are 7 measurements that you make, not that there were 7 measuring cups. Let's just see the Mishnah quickly. We're starting from the smallest measure. What was the Revius Halug? What was that used for in the Beis Hamikdash? Like we did in the first one by the dry measures. We're going to go through what the need of all the different measurements were. So what was the Revius for? Revius Mayim l'Mitzayr, Revius Shemen l'Nazir. There was a Revius Mayim for the Mitzayr that went with the birds and the Ezoiv, that they would dip it into water. So it was a Revius of Mayim. Revius Shemen l'Nazir, and there was a Revius Shemen for the Nazir, for the Avodah of the Nazir. Chatzid lug mayim mishamas. What was the chatzid lug for? Chatzid lug mayim l'soita, for the mei soita. But chatzid lug shemen l'toida. There was half of a lug that was used for the toida. Ubeloig hayim moided l'chol ha-menachos. The lug itself, that was the normal amount for an isaron, was 1 lug shemen. Afilu mincha shel samach soyin noisin loy samach lug. Even if you can make it however many isaron you want, but you would measure it a ratio of 1 lug per isaron, and then you'd use the single lug measurement. He He disagrees. He says there's no ratio. You don't do one Isarin for one lug for every Isarin. And no matter how many Isarin you made a mincha, there's only one lug shemen. Shenema the mincha of a lug shemen. So tomorrow, shishal apar v'arbal ayil shloishal keves. There was 6 for a par, 4 for an ayil, and 3 for a keves. Shloisha umechza l'menorah, and I'm sorry, right? So we needed the shisha, the measurement of 6, which was half a hin that we had said in the Mishnah, was for the par. So that was 6 lugan. Va'arbal ayil 4, which was the shlisha sahin, and ushloisha lekeves, which is the quarter of a hin. Umechza, right? Shloisha umechza l'menorah, and 3.5 was for the menorah. Chatzi lug l'chol ner. There was 7 neris, so there was a chatzi lug for each ner. Even though we didn't have a separate kli for that, but once we were saying what all the measurements were, we include the measurement of the menorah. Yosef Rabbi b'kakashale, v'yis lama nimshecha. Rabbi asked, what was the purpose of the revius? Even though the Mishnah had said 2 possibilities, imitzaira chutzu, the mitzaira was not mekudesh, so you didn't need a klisharis for it. It was done outside of the Beis Hamikdash. The nazir, lechem nazir, b'shchitas ayil hu de kodesh. This is the shemen for the lechem of the nazir, but that wasn't mekudesh with the klisharis. We saw in the Gemara earlier that it was tied together with the carbon of the nazir. So when you were shechted ayil, that was what was mekadesh the oil. Amlerechia shebaya yamayid l'chavite kain gadol. Reviya shemen l'chol chala v'chala. Since it was a reviya shemen for each chala of the chavite kain gadol, kari ala meretz kari. So he said, this is taka good teretz. Me'erech machak ish atzasi. From someone who comes far away. Rechia came from Bavel. He came with a good eitzah. So it sounds like Rebbe was chayzer from what he said in the Mishnah, right? Rebbe was the Masad of the Mishnah. So Rebbe was being chayzer. He said it was for the Nazir and the Taida, and the the Mitzaira. The taka wasn't the reason. It was for the Chavite Kain Gadol. Okay, we'll stop over here.
Thank you.
I expect I'm going to be in shul tomorrow, Bez.
Okay.
That's our plan. Okay, take care.
Yes, go.